Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Sure. Hi, Kimberly. My name is Vic Ferrari. I'm from Florida. I'm a retired NYPD detective, born and raised in New York City. I had a wonderful 20-year career with the New York City Police Department, worked in a lot of different units, including the auto crime division, the narcotics division. I was a detective. I investigated organized crime. After I retired from the NYPD after a wonderful 20-year career, I got into writing. I've written a series of funny, humorous, behind-the-scenes look at the New York City Police Department.
Okay, and can we go a little bit in depth of about your? Thank you so much. It's nice and it's an honor to talk to an officer. And can you tell me a little bit more about your past leading up into what you do now?
Sure. So growing up in the Bronx as a little boy, my mom used to take me to the movie theater, and around the corner from the local movie theater was a police station. So on Saturday mornings on the way up there, I would run up to the police cars and look in the windows and look at the equipment. And sometimes the cops would come out and put their hats on my head or hand me a nightstick to play with for a couple of seconds. So I was just, amazed. It just was something I said, I think I want to do this at 5 years old. And I tell the story by age 10, my friends and I used to go into the local post office and steal FBI wanted posters off the wall and go around the neighborhood having manhunts. So we'd walk into the local deli with an FBI wanted poster sizing up some poor AT&T worker getting a sandwich. Like, he could be the guy that did this bank robbery in Louisiana. By 21, I took the test. I became a New York City police officer. Like I said, I had a wonderful 20-year career.
Wow. Can you tell me in each division? I'm just going to go ahead and give you a
Sure.
long SAT question. Based on each division you've been in, can you tell me a spontaneous story that happened like in every division you've been in your career as an officer?
I hope you got time. So in the
We
police
do.
academy, where I started off, they took us to the morgue at Bellevue Hospital in the basement. They wanted us to get a little taste of death. And it wasn't like you saw in an episode of Quincy, right? In Quincy, there was like one slab and Jack Klugman and the detectives. It looked like a Jiffy Lube. There was like 8 bays, and you had workers and medical examiners, and they were just cutting people open. It was like an assembly line. And between each slab was a produce scale where they would take organs out of people and weigh them, and there'd be a guy writing down stuff on a clipboard. And I'll never forget, there was some kid that was like hogtied and shot a bunch of times, and the medical examiner was pulling bullets out of this kid and dumping it in this metal bucket. And there was a detective standing over his shoulder eating an Egg McMuffin and drinking a coffee. And the detective says to the medical examiner, "So what do you think?" And the medical examiner goes, "Suspicious suicide." And they're laughing. And I'm 21 years old, and I'm like, wow, these guys really have a gallows humor. From there, I went into field training in the South Bronx, and I remember being just dropped off on a foot post in the middle of the South Bronx and told, "Figure it out." And you got to remember, I got hired in the mid-'80s during the height of the crack epidemic. And yeah, I grew up in the Bronx, but not that part of the Bronx. And there was crackheads walking by trying to sell stuff. And I'm saying to myself, what the hell have I gotten myself into? And I remember, like, in the police academy, all they tell you about is police corruption. Look for police corruption. If you see police corruption, you got to call the Internal Affairs Division. And some rookie cop convinced me. What had happened was there was a dispute on my post. This woman wanted her boyfriend arrested. There was nothing to arrest the boyfriend for, and he wasn't even there. And I basically did some paperwork and I left. And later on, this woman ran into the kid, another cop that I was working with, and she told him, "Oh, my boyfriend told me that the reason the cop didn't arrest him is because he paid him off." So I wound up calling the Internal Affairs Division on myself, which was the most ridiculous thing in the world because it set off alarms and bells and whistles. And this old-time captain goes, "Son, what the hell is wrong with you that you're calling Internal Affairs?" He goes, "Did you take anything?" I said, "No, sir." He goes, "Then just shut up and just, he goes, just play by the rules." He goes, but don't listen to everything you hear." From there, I worked in a South Bronx precinct. If you ever saw the 1980s movie Fort Apache, The Bronx with Paul Newman, they filmed that in the old 4-2 station house, and I worked there. And that was a wild place to work because, again, it's the early 80s, and we had a lot of guys left over from the Vietnam era. and they were not user-friendly to rookie cops. So when a rookie cop arrives in a precinct, the old timers really don't talk to you. They don't really want to have anything to do with you. It's like you've been dropped off from outer space. And the younger cops treat you worse because they've been there a couple of years and they kind of know what's going on, but not really. And they basically treat you like an older brother that kind of abuses you and just kind of pushes you around. I said to myself, I'm not going to work here for the rest of my career. So I went from there, from bad to worse. I transferred to a place called Bronx Task Force, which was a borough-wide unit. And since I was a rookie and had no say in anything, I got stuck in a DUI unit. And oh my God, there's no winning dealing with drunks. They cry. They want to fight. They become sick. They wet themselves. There's no reasoning with them. So, I'm locking up several drunks a month, including the cops that I work with. And I just was saying to myself, what have I gotten myself into? Like, I want to do police work and I'm like a drunk wrangler. I got out of there. I transferred up to a nicer precinct in the Bronx and I did the work. I got good evaluations. I went into a plainclothes unit called anti-crime. So we did robberies in progress, burglaries in progress, not undercover, but we drove around in an unmarked police car that gave us a couple of seconds on the bad guys. I'm making all these arrests. I'm getting good evaluations, and everybody starts telling me, you got to put in for the narcotics division. You have to put in for the narcotics division. So I put in for the narcotics division. I went into Manhattan North Narcotics, and it was like narcotics in the NYPD is like the fast food of restaurants. It's mass processing arrests. It's go, 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 go. There's never a moment to sit down. And the thing I quickly learned was I didn't like it was fun after a while. You're getting in foot chases a couple of times a week. You're knocking down people's doors with search warrants. But then after a while, you start realizing when you're processing these mass arrests, you're locking up street people, right? You're locking up drug addicts that basically are selling drugs. They're not kingpins, but they're on the corner selling drugs to feed their habits. So for every 10 vials of crack they sell, they get a free crack vial for themselves. For every 10 decks of heroin they sell, they get a free deck of heroin. And it was depressing. Not only that, street people, they live outside. They're not in the best of health. And you're searching, 10, 15 of them a day. I had a cold. I remember my year and a half of narcotics. I was always sick. I was getting over one cold. I was getting another. And another thing you have to realize is with street people, there was always the fear of getting stuck with a needle. So you're searching these people. And I'd always ask, listen, if you got a needle, you got a hypodermic needle, please tell me now, I'll get rid of it. And 99% of the time they did. But God forbid you stick your hand in someone's pocket or sock. You could get HIV. You could get hepatitis C. So there was always that thought on my mind. From there, I went back to patrol. I kept making car arrests. I was always a car guy. And I made a lot of stolen vehicle arrests that I wound up in the NYPD's auto crime division. And I loved it. It was, we went after garden variety car thieves, chop shops, exporting stolen vehicles out of the country, mafia-owned locations. So we were averaging, New York City was averaging 150,000 stolen vehicles a year in the 5 boroughs. So it was like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, if you went out there and started running plates, you were going to come across a stolen car. Loved every minute of my NYPD career, had my ups and downs. But after 20 years, it was time to get off that merry-go-round.
And tell me, you know what? You well said that crap. Like, seriously, that story was well said. Oh my God, you've done so many wonderful things. And can you tell me about what you do now, leading up into your present? Thank you, by the way.
You're welcome. After I retired from the NYPD, I moved down to Florida, and I was bored. So I said, you know what? I'm going to become a police officer again. I'm going to reinvent myself. So I got my certification. I got hired by a smaller police department down here in Florida, and what a big mistake. Great department, but here I come in my early 40s working, I was a detective in the largest police department in the country working organized crime. Now I'm back on the road, and now it's back to drunks and domestic violence, and I was like, oh no, I don't have the patience for this. And in Florida, becoming a cop in Florida after a 20-year career in the NYPD is like having a stroke and having to relearn everything. Yes, somebody breaks a window. I know to put handcuffs on them and take them to jail, but everything's different. Plus, things are so different down here. Like, we spent half a day learning how to wrestle alligators. And I said to myself, in New York, I never, we got crime. We don't have alligators. I said, can't we just shoot these things? And they go, no, you can't shoot them. Every police car's got duct tape. We want you to, I was like Steve Irwin, like, you got to get in back of them and then like hold their mouth and wrap the duct tape. Like, I'm not doing that. Either A, I'm not going to that call, or B, I'm going to shoot it and get in trouble. So I said to myself, I am not fit to be a police officer in Florida in my 40s. So it's like, Calgon, take me away. I re-retired. And man, all my friends and family kept telling me, you got all these funny stories. You can tell a story. Why don't you get into writing and start writing about your NYPD career? I was apprehensive about it. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it right. I'm not a sour grapes kind of guy. What I'm going to do is I don't want to get anybody divorced, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble or embarrassed. So all my books are loaded with short stories of the funny things, and there's dark stuff too that happened in my NYPD career, but I changed the names, the dates, the locations, but these things happened. You know what I mean? Some are embellished, but I mean, they're all based on things that happened during the course of my career. And I wrote one NYPD book. It started selling. I wrote another. Now I'm up to 6 books. And it's just been a wonderful journey for me.
And where do you see yourself right now going towards the future?
I'm going to keep writing until it's A, not fun, and B, I run out of ideas. And so far that hasn't happened, although it is in the back of my mind. I average a book a year. So I usually have a book coming out every spring. From the time I start writing to the time it goes to the editing process, a book cover, and then formatting and everything, because I self-publish. It takes me a year. It keeps me busy. It eats up enough time to keep me out of trouble, but it's not overwhelming. And also now, I mean, to get my books out there, I've gotten into podcasting. Now, I'm not a podcaster, but people like yourself with shows and platforms, they're nice enough to put me on their shows. You could have the greatest book or product in the world, but if nobody hears about it, it's not going to sell. So a third of my time now is going on shows and telling my stories about my books.
Wow. And can you tell the people, like, I don't want to get off the line with you. I want to ask you more questions.
Sure.
So your book details about your history of your career of being a police officer and detective, right?
Yes.
Anything else that you want to mention about your book?
I mean, I have 6 right now. I mean, I took a break from writing about the NYPD. Like, I wrote 4 NYPD books in a row, right? And my younger brother, who's in a lot of my books, says, you should really write a book about our childhood. Growing up in the Bronx, it was a different time. We were always in trouble. The best cops are always in trouble as kids. And I wrote Confessions of a Catholic High School Graduate. And there's a picture of a kid in a Catholic high school uniform getting chased out of a confessional by a priest. That really happened to me. No, I wasn't molested or anything, but when you confess one sin too many with an angry priest, it can lead to a foot chase through an empty church.
Okay. And it's funny, you may not believe it or not. I was saying 2 things in my mind, and you probably either already done it or have anticipated doing it. One thing is writing like a children police officer book and putting it on a children's network, like PBS or something, because you just look like a editor type. You are, and then another thing is like a magazine, assembling your crew of old cops and everything to write their experiences and stories and put them together in one magazine. That would be cool. What do you think about that?
It would be cool, and that's a really good idea. And I hadn't thought. I've thought about a children's book, but the latter I had not thought about. The thing with cops is, and I don't understand why. I do and I don't. We're very clannish. We kind of keep to ourselves. Most cops, most of their friends are all cops, or their family are cops. They have other friends, but it's their nucleus is usually people that worked in law enforcement. They're very apprehensive to write about their past. And I do encourage a lot of my friends' stories. I mean, there's stories in these books of my friends that I don't name them, but experiences that happened to them. I asked them first, listen, is it all right if I write about that time you almost got thrown in an incinerator? Yeah, sure. Put it in there. Like, I think he should have written about that, but it's, you're right. I mean, that would be a great idea.
Okay. And do you have any kind words to the young entrepreneur that wants to be a cop like you? Because, when I was younger, I always wanted to be a cop too. So, that is awesome what you've done for the community.
When you're a new police officer, well, it starts in the police academy, and it goes all the way to field training and until you make your bones in the precinct. The best advice I can give is keep your mouth shut and your ears open. There's a lot of things going on in a precinct and in the street, and as streetwise as you think you are, you don't know it. The street talks, and there's things going on in the precinct that you don't know. I mean, I kid around, but it's true. A New York City precinct has anywhere between 100 to 250 cops and NYPD members in there, right? You're a rookie. You get dropped off. Nobody likes to know it all. Nobody likes somebody with a big mouth, especially the first one through the door, and like, who the hell is this guy? And once you get a bad reputation in law enforcement, it's very difficult to get that off. And, people aren't going to help you, and there's a lot to learn. So be humble, listen, and take your job seriously. Read up on tactics, do your training, take that seriously. You know what I mean? And listen to people. Don't be so dismissive. I see it with a lot of young cops sometimes. People approach them and they're very dismissive. And A, that pisses off the community. And B, somebody might be telling you something that can help you or save your life.
Okay. Thank you so much. Stay on the line. Thank you so much for joining my show. What time is it? I don't want to take no more of your time.
Fine.
So,
You're fine. I got nowhere I got to be. Ask away.
Well, I have two more questions then. Speaking, how when you used to be an officer, you'll be riding down the street to catch a bad guy, and the bad guy can see you 2 cars behind. Well, they have all this technology in everything. They got stealth technology for the planes and everything. So my question is this: do you think that they should invest 2 things in the police force, which is stealth technology for police cars and robots, like not the human like look robots, like not like that, but robots implanted at every district that is not so safe, like every 2-mile radius. That way they can detect with artificial intelligence, guns, drugs, how much drugs is being stored, what drugs is being stored, how many ounces it is. So it will not inflict any violence on the police officers that have to check them like you all had to do for years and get possibly poked by something.
Yeah, okay. So technology has evolved in law enforcement that most people have no idea what's going on. So to give you an example, when I retired, it was in its infancy, but I see it now and I've asked questions. So they have things now mounted on police cars called plate readers. So if you see a police car and it's got 2 little black boxes, they look like little Bose speakers. If you see them mounted on the trunk of a police car, that's a plate reader. So you drive by that police car, he drives past you. Those cameras are snapping photos of license plates. Then they're running them in the car. They're running it to see if the car is stolen, if the insurance and registration is current. Is the driver got a warrant or a suspended license? And let's just say, for argument's sake, there's a shooting or a homicide in that neighborhood. They can check the plate readers of the cars and see who passed in that neighborhood during that time period. So there's a log of cars in that neighborhood. So the police cars got GPS. So they'll say, who was in that area of that shooting at 2 a.m.? Oh, I was. And then they'll upload every license plate that police car snapped a photo of, and then they could start going to people. What were you doing in that neighborhood at 2:00 in the morning last night? Also, what they have nowadays, and I don't know the name of it, but they're on poles, and basically they detect gunfire. So if someone letting off a couple of shots, these machines can tell the difference, in theory, between a firecracker and a gunshot, and will alert the police. There's shots fired in a specific neighborhood. What you were speaking about with artificial intelligence, it's a slippery slope. It sounds great, but then you're kind of going into Big Brother, right? We all like our privacy, right? And as fun as it is to watch YouTube videos of someone doing something stupid on a Ring doorbell cam, right? At the same time, it's getting towards Big Brother, where if the government wants, they'll be able to be intrusive in every aspect of your life. I see it both ways. I mean, when I was in law enforcement, I probably would have said, yeah, we should do that. Now that I'm retired, I take a step back and say, you know, that is kind of intrusive. Like, nobody likes being stopped all the time. Nobody likes being monitored all the time. And I know that the argument is, well, if you got nothing to hide, but, well, you know, I don't need this. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to go to the store without having somebody to know I went to the store. Or, you know, if I want to get gasoline at 11 o'clock at night because I got a trip tomorrow, I don't want people to, you know what I mean? It's just, it gets intrusive after a while.
Understood. And, you know, in counterpart, the only reason I brought it up was because I feel like, you know, it's just so much crime.
Oh, yeah.
And I want the crime to be limited so that women can feel more safe on their street, you know, and children can feel more safe at schools. And that's my main goal, you know. Maybe it will lead up to that very moment when one day we will have that type of technology. But right now, I see the things that y'all have been doing in the police force, and y'all have ways that nobody know, like you said. So I congratulate y'all on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
What was you said you had another question?
Yeah, you know, I kind of mixed it into so I can think about so many questions. So what can you tell us that you learned? This is the last question, but
Sure.
what can
Okay.
you tell us that you learned from the police force, from all that time you spent there?
I wasn't as smart as I thought I was getting hired. So I grew up, like I explained earlier, that's all I ever wanted to do, right? I grew up watching police shows, the French Connection movie, the Rockford Files. I wanted to be a detective. I thought I had it all figured out. And then once I hit the street, I'm like, well, this is nothing like what I saw on television. You know, it's like you see in Lethal Weapon, they crash up a car and they get another car the next day and the lieutenant yells at him a little bit. You crash up a car, they basically put you on the shelf. You got to go for retraining and you never hear the end of it. And, you know, it's like, here's another thing people don't realize. And I can speak to how New York City works. Say, for argument's sake, you and I are working together and we're doing a day shift. And we came in at 7 o'clock in the morning. And 9 o'clock in the morning, someone's robbing the bank. And the guy comes out of the bank, guns a-blazing. And me and you shoot the guy and kill the guy, right? Million witnesses. He robbed the bank. Good shooting. Couldn't have been any, you know, not that any shooting's good, but justified, right? You and I will be poked and prodded. So we shot this guy at 7. We killed this guy at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're not going home for probably 24 hours. We're going to get interviewed by the sergeant on the scene, a lieutenant. The detectives are going to start an investigation. Chief of the Bronx is going to come and talk to us. People from One Police Plaza are going to come down to talk to us. A district attorney with a stenographer is going to come down and take a statement that night. Crime scene is going to come down. It's not like on television, you kill a guy, you get into a shooting, or you discharge your weapon. It's, yeah, don't worry about it. Then what they do is they're going to put us on restricted duty. And they're going to take our guns from us, and they're going to see, they're going to, until they're 100% sure this shooting is correct. Then within 5 days, you and I are going to run past a grand jury. and we're going to have to testify to our actions to see if 16 to 23 people in that grand jury think that our actions were justified. And if they think they're having a bad day and they vote to indict us, guess what? You and I get arrested. And then we have to go through the whole legal process like everybody else. So it's not like television. You get into a shooting and it's no big deal. It's a big deal that's investigated thoroughly.
Sort of like Law and Order. They never showed the ending of the cop shooting the bad guy. They don't, they'll probably show a brief synopsis of him being investigated, but the way you've explained it, I see why it's hard for cops to want to shoot a bad guy. And speaking of that, I must have you on my show again because
Sure.
I want to run into what year did you get out the police force, sir?
I was active from 1987 to 2007.
Okay. Were you having any issues with because right now I know New York City is having issues with aliens coming over, illegal aliens. And the Attorney General has changed, but that'll be another story for another day.
Sure.
So yeah, like I said, stay on the line. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. And you guys take care. Be safe. Thank you, everyone. Be safe. Bye bye. Give me just a second.